I want to talk about why I'm doing this channel and about Navayana Buddhism. And in my first 20 or so videos, I talked a lot about that journey from being a priest and being a Christian leader to this sort of space in between that and whatever was next. And then there was a big gap with no videos while I just think through all of that in my head again. And I think I know what this channel is for now. Probably all of you knew that, but here's a stupid thing. When I posted videos about the thing I'm really interested in, they got the least number of hits and it put me off. But actually that's forgetting what this was for, which is just to think out loud. It doesn't really matter whether a few people watch or lots of people watch. Actually, it's kind of self-accountability, this YouTubing business. So here I am thinking out loud. And really what I want to explore is Navayana and Zen Buddhism, particularly Navayana Buddhism. But let me explain a bit about how I came to that. So I studied Christian anarchism and post-colonialism in India, and that was my PhD many, many years ago. And through that, I learnt about Bhimrao Ambedkar. First came across Ambedkar by seeing his picture up outside platform railway stations in India, and then seeing his face in people's homes on portraits, and not really knowing who he was, but just realizing that his face was about, particularly in South India actually, although I'm sure if I traveled across Maharashtra, I would see his face a lot. That's where most of the Navayana Buddhists are. I'm going to talk a lot about Ambedkar over the next few videos, I'm sure, but just to introduce him as the chair of the Constitutional Committee at the moment of the birth of the Indian nation. So very much a father of the Indian nation in at least as much as Gandhi. And as somebody who made the journey as a Shudra, as somebody who was low caste, to being one of the most leading political and social reformers and revolutionaries in the emerging nation state of India. And he was brought up told he was a Hindu, and yet told he was, according to Hinduism, beyond the pale, that he was untouchable. So the religion to which he belonged told him that he was defiling, untouchable, unclean, that he should stay away from the wells that the rest of the village drank from and the rivers, which were just for the high caste people, that he should stay away from the and he resisted and fought against that. And I've always been interested in, as far as I can remember, in theory of change. And as a community organizer, as a leader of a community, a religious community, theory of change has always fascinated me. How do we really make the world better than it is? And I've experimented in theory of change all my life as a campaigner and as a protester and as a community organizer in national and local campaigns, theory of change. And Ambedkar was really into this as well. He was really interested in how do we change the world for Dalit people, for Shudras, for those who are on the margins of Indian society. And for him, his theory of change changed over time. And that's very well recorded, implicitly at least, and sometimes explicitly. And I really want to map his journey of how he came from thinking of change as being about social reform and constitutional reform to being something much more radical and about personal script and structural change for his whole community. And I just think a really good conversational partner and accompanier as I think about my own spiritual journey and my own journey in terms of understanding how change happens, as being somebody who was much more about direct action, to being somebody who was much more about change through institutions, to being somebody who has become much more disenchanted with institutional change. So I'm going to be thinking and studying Ambedkar's writings, some of which is very dry, some of which is quite exciting, some of which is about constitutional law, some of which is his rewriting of the Buddhist scriptures into his own way, called like the Bible of Buddhism, called The Buddha and His Dharma, something I read a few years ago and want to go back to. So these videos will be that. There'll be a journey into what does Buddhism mean today for those who see it not just about individual spiritual change and who want to see it not just about suffering on a personal level, but about structural injustice, about political suffering, which is what Ambedkar wanted to rethink Buddhism as. So that's what these videos will be about. And as part of that journey, I've signed up to the Bodleian Library in Oxford, because that way I can access so much more material on this. But I also want to have conversations with people in my own community about this. So I need to think of experiments where I can meet with other people locally, where I live, who are interested in Buddhism and how that might be about our real lives as well. So watch this space if you're interested in that.